And we're a go.
Okay, we'll call the City of Olivet Planning Community Design Commission for May 20th, 2021 to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Rob Jurgel,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Jody Rich here, Richard Brophy,
Absent.
Okay.
Ryan Lewis,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Let it also be known that City Council Liaison Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as Staff Liaison Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning Community Design, as well as Dawn Doty, Senior Planner, Bridget Waters, Administrative Assistant. Did I miss anybody?
I think you got everybody.
Okay, good. So we will now move on to item 2, which is a review of commission procedures. Just to let everybody know, we will have public comments that are open at the beginning, and we'll also check for public comments at the end as well, because we're getting used to the Zoom. We'll probably get used to the Zoom just in time to start having in-person meetings, but we shall see. Just to go over a little bit of the procedures, if you do have a public comment or a comment specific to anything on the agenda items, we ask that you wait and bring it up at that time. What we'll do is when we go through these agenda items, there'll be a staff report that will be discussed with staff. There'll be some time for discussions with the petitioner, probably some more discussions with the commissioners, and then we will bring it open for public comments if there are any public comments related to that specific item. Bear with us with the Zoom. We are getting better and better with this, but there's always a few little snags here and there. So we're all trying hard, but I think, if anybody's been on Zoom meetings, you all know what we're talking about. So, all right. Regarding public comments, or any comments that are made from the public, we do have to limit the comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Just to make sure we respect everybody's time and to make sure we can hear from everybody as well. So, okay. That being said, I think Carlos will ask if there's any public comments at this time.
All right, Chairman, if anybody would like to speak about an item that's not scheduled on the agenda, you're welcome. If you can raise your hand icon should be located at the lower part of your monitor. As soon as we see that, we'll transfer you over. And Chairman, on the attendees list, I do not see anybody.
Good. Okay.
Any requests right now.
And then as just another comment regarding public comments or any comments related, we ask that when you are brought on to the panel and being allowed to speak, we ask that you state your name and address for the record. All right, great. We'll move on to old business, which there are none. So then we'll move on to consent business. This is item A. This is 9612 Old Bonham Road. The petition type is a site plan review for the installation of rooftop solar panels. The petitioner is Janet Hazel with EFS Energy Incorporated. Property owner is Chris Colmar. Carlos?
Chairman, if I can relay that consent business gives the commission an opportunity to act on all the items listed on there, including the 9612 Old Bonham Road for the rooftop solar panel installations and the residential addition proposed for 7 Bond Hills Drive. Those have been reviewed by staff and both are fully compliant with the city's zoning regulations, and we find them compliant with the community design review process. The solar panels are consistent with the panel installations that have been approved by the commission in the past. The only reason it is before the commission is because they're not grouped in one bunch, and therefore our policy is to bring it or inform the commission in there. But all these panels face the rear of the property. For 7 Bond Hills, they did a very nice design for this addition. They worked hard as there was various scenarios, including a concept that required a variance, but I think ultimately the property owner and architect came to an option and a solution that worked within the zoning regulations. And I think if you're looking at the elevations that are provided in your packet, they did a really nice design aspect. The only thing they need to address is the stormwater. And that is noted as a condition in the staff report, and that we would handle that through the permitting process. So Chairman, I'd ask if you would consider the two items jointly, or if you'd like to separate those. I do have the information.
Well, let's just see if there's any commission members that have any questions or comments on these first. Anybody have any questions or comments? Scrolling through, seeing none, I don't see any reason why we can't group them together.
And Chairman, I'd also like to note that I do recognize at least the property owner for 7 Bond Hills is in attendance. I don't see a representative for the solar panels, but that was based on my discussion with them, that I think everything was provided that was necessary. So again, I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Coster at 7 Bond Hills is here.
These are raised hands.
And we do have one public comment.
Okay, good. Let's hear that.
And if you could bear with me 1 second, and I'll get to you. All right, Mr. Rubenstein, you've been transferred over, and if you can state your name and address and allow for your video, be greatly appreciated.
Sure, no problem. My name's Jeremy Rubenstein. I'm a solar consultant with EFS Energy and just wanted to be present here this evening in the case that anybody had any particular questions or concerns. I just wanted to be a representative of the company and join you all tonight.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, Carlos, since we're going to do this as a combined, do you have a motion already prepared, or should we just read off the motions individually?
Read off of the motions individually.
Okay, great. Do I hear a motion from anybody?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to motion that should the commission consider action on the petition, the following motion is recommended. I motion to approve the petition for community design review for the installation of rooftop solar panels at 9612 Old Bonham Road, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated May 20, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded, but this is just for the Old Bottom Road. Do we want to add the other one?
No, the
Yes.
individual motion's okay, sir. I should have
Okay.
been a little bit more clear or appreciate.
No worries, no worries. Let's do that and let's call the roll call vote.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Commissioner and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
And the motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Good. Do I hear another motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition at 7 Bond Hills Drive, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated May 20, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
And seconded by Brian Lewis. Carlos, will you please call the roll call vote?
Mr. Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
And the motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
Good. All right. So now we'll move on to new business. Item A is 9316 Olive Boulevard, Lococo Fine Arts Publishing. Carlos, I thought this, did you say that to me earlier that this might be
Correct. We are requesting deferral of this item. We'll have it scheduled for our second meeting in June. There are some items that still need to be resolved.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to item B, which is the Gateway I-170 redevelopment area, the area southwest corner of Olive Boulevard and 170. Petition type is amendment to the approved development review master plan with the addition of a multifamily residential component. Petitioner is Greg Yawitz with Keat Olivet Gateway LLC. Property owner is Keat Olivet Gateway LLC. Carlos?
Chairman, we received a petition request to amend the adopted master development plan for the Olive Crossing development. This is part of a planned development district for the I-170 Gateway redevelopment area that was designated by the city. The developer, Keat Properties or Keat Olivet, was the developer selected, and subsequently a master plan, as you see before you, was adopted by ordinance, as noted in your reports. The developer has been seeking to change use on lot 4, which is this lower lot here where my hand item is, from a 4-story office structure with parking garage to a 5-story residential apartment building or multifamily building with a parking structure on lot 4, and then to provide 2 various scenarios for lots 1 and 2, which are along Olive Boulevard. One is for the potential of a larger commercial structure, a single-story structure on one side of the site. The other is to maintain the current approval where there's a smaller commercial structure and 1 drive-through structure on there. Within the adopted ordinance and the developers agreement, the petitioner is allowed up to 3 drive-through facilities. They're only seeking 1, which is part of the original master development plan that is on file at this point. So the property is zoned what we called MU Gateway District. We created that district back in 2011 specifically for furthering the vision, the goals, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. The city pursued a request for proposals for redevelopment of this area, selected Keat Olivet as the developer. And in doing so, we rezoned the properties to ensure that they were all within the MU district, and then adopted our first planned development district for this. Since then, the only other planned development district that the city has considered is the Opus Group development that's on the north side of Olive behind Chevy's. So this is fairly new ordinance, and we're working our way through the process. The intent of the MU Gateway District, again, was to further the goals of the strategic plan, to provide flexibility in the redevelopment process. And what we do is that first, there's just this 3-phase process. The first phase is a conceptual layout, which the petitioner has gone through a couple of years ago, and then a development review, which is similar to what the process we are doing right now, where we try to get a master plan put together of the development area and narrow down to the number of lots, buildings, and get as close as we can to an actual design. The next phase after this is, as each individual building is proposed for permitting, they go through a design review, coming back to the commission where you get more detailed elevations, floor plans, the traditional items that you see in there. So the goal here was, again, to provide a process where we can create a master development plan, establish principles and regulations that would govern redevelopment in the master development plan, that gave us some flexibility in the process, and then require the developer to come back in for review when individual buildings were being built. So far, this has been a pretty successful process. We're still going through the tweaks. We found that, like in the Opus Group, when you have, a 23 lot assemblage created into 1 lot with 1 building, the process is somewhat redundant. But when you have a 14-acre development such as the Olive Crossing that is truly multi-use, multi-building, multi-parcel, the master development plan process works a lot better. Again, it gives flexibility for changes within each individual lot. And then as as a design or tenant comes into place, then the commission again has an opportunity to review more of the details. The devil's always in the details in the process. Because the master development plan as submitted was placed as an exhibit in the adopting ordinance, the change in the use of lot 4 going from office to residential, similar to what the tax increment financing component was, necessitated that the master development plan had to be amended. And that's why the developer is here today to reflect in the master development plan and the adopting ordinance that a change is being requested and would be taking place as part of the process. The goal here is the developer, again, primarily would like to convert lot 4 from the previous office building and parking structure shown here in this scenario to a residential, multifamily residential structure with a parking garage. At that point, I think that kind of covers the grand overview of what's being proposed here, and I'd be glad to answer any specific questions regarding the amendment or anything on that process.
There's a couple of questions. We'll go take Brian's question first.
Yep, thank you, Carlos. I guess I'm curious, obviously this was a year ago, so we discussed this, but the office building initially I thought was office building and then grocer at the bottom, and then it got modified away from grocer to just office building, if I'm correct. So I want to validate that. And 2, I guess I'm curious how far the process has gone with the neighbors, because obviously one of the concerns people had before was, views into yards and things like that. And I think one of the arguments was, well, it's an office building, people aren't there at night, it's not there, but now if it's residential. And I'm also curious, does this also revisit some of the traffic concerns that existed before? I don't know if it's better or worse, to be honest, with people now maybe gone leaving in the morning, coming back at night versus the flip of that. So maybe it's 6 1/2 dozen, but impacts the weekends more. So sorry, I have a litany of questions there.
No, all good. And if I can summarize, and one was the original components of that lot 4 did include the potential for a commercial component on that lower level. And it was illustrated, as you see before the monitor right now, or what's posted on the screen, that that they would be continuing to seek if on that lower level they could secure a grocer, and that within that configuration there would be that flexibility. So you are correct. And it wasn't that there would be 2 different options, is that within that original plan that there would be enough flexibility to incorporate a grocer if the developer could pursue one. The second is discussions with the neighbors and regarding to the change in use, the office building being somewhat limited from daylight times to residential now having a more expanded timeframe. I'll let the developer address that aspect in there. For us, that's what this current process is about in there. So notifications have been sent out. We are having our first meeting or discussion. Now, a lot of discussion and some of those concerns were expressed at the tax increment financing meetings in there, but their focus was more about the financing and the costs and requests that were in there. And they did note that many of these kind of issues would be probably better tackled through the commission as it goes through the review process and ultimately to the council. Any change, because it is within the land use code, will also require a public hearing. That hearing will be before the city council in there. So I'll let the developer address it. If there were any specific outreach efforts that have gone above and beyond what the city traditionally provides in the process. And on your third question on the traffic, yes, we did have discussions with the Missouri Department of Transportation and the developer along with their traffic engineer. And the analysis was that the residential component actually lowered the expected traffic rates for the development, and therefore no additional improvements were requested by the Missouri Department of Transportation on the Olive Corridor.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm glad to hear it's part of the process. So it makes sense.
Sorry, Brian. I'm just in response to that. How many units is the proposed apartment building going to be?
That's a good question. I have that somewhere in my notes here, and right now I am going to say that it is about 150 to 180. I'll let the developer address that one.
Okay. I think there was a question. Tim, I think you had a question.
Yes, thank you. What was the existing height supposed to be and what is the new height going to be?
The proposed height for lot 4, or that was authorized, and I believe that is in the packet of information in here, but bear with me, was lot 4 not to exceed 64 feet. Now, one of the things on the master development plan that you see in front of your monitor right now noted that it would be a 4-story structure. I believe the residential structure that's being proposed is a 5-story structure, but not to exceed 64 feet. So there's no actual request in the change in height. In the measurable height, they are in stories. And I'll note that the difference was that in the original office building, or the current lot 4 that's been authorized, that first floor was 2 times the height of the traditional floors.
Because of the proposed or potential for a grocery store or something.
Grocery or commercial use, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments before we bring on the developer?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Carlos, is this change in site plan going to impact any of the public spaces that we talked about?
No, the public spaces as we've seen have been greater defined, and I think the developer will show those in this presentation. And those aren't changing. The terms, the areas that we were identified within the adopted ordinance will still be the same ones that you'll see a little bit more detail on those. Those will come in for final approvals, of course, in the next step or the next phase of this process, which will be the design review.
Carlos, I know we're talking about lot 4, but it looks like there's been some other changes to the anticipated use for lot 5 and lot 6, not use, but I guess building footprints.
Bear with me 1 second, sir.
No worries.
All right. And I think here you'll see, and again, this is part of the process as we learn through the PDD and the master plan or master development plan review. The footprint configuration of the buildings, you're correct, has changed from those that were part of the original approval. But that's not necessarily to say that's not consistent with the master plan. These were to identify and illustrate the potential building masses, heights, and footprints in there. As you can see, the lot 7 here, which was the hotel complex, had 2 components because it had 2 tenants in there. So there was a southern area and then a northern area. The building here that was part of lot 6, the drive-through here was removed, and then the office building and the parking structure in the office building were shifted northward in the revised plan.
Is the parking structure changing in height at all or size? Looks like it's getting wider.
It probably is getting wider in footprint, yes.
Is that because of the loss of parking in front
Along
of?
this area, as some of the public spaces got redefined, yes.
Has there been any other changes related to some of the public spaces?
Yes, and I think we'll see those when the petitioner provides his presentation. They're
Okay,
more three-dimensional to articulate, or kind of like vignettes to articulate what those spaces are. What was in the adopting ordinance was that these were the designated areas that we wanted to see as enhanced public spaces. But they weren't, the vignettes were not incorporated into the ordinance itself.
okay, okay. If there's no other questions or comments at this time, I think we should bring on the developer.
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to promote Greg Yowitz with Keith Olivet as a panelist. And Mr. Yowitz, if you can state your name and your address, and then also make sure your monitor is on, which we can see you. And it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Greg Yowitz, 6 Heather Hill Lane, owner of Keat Olivet Gateway, the petitioner for tonight. So why don't let's see, can I share screen there, Carlos?
Yes, you can, sir.
I can, look at that. All right, let me get my screen to where I want to start. Oh, I have to, let's start with here. Okay. Share. There we go. All right. So you see, you can see the site plan, the current one.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what's going on, and I'll run through a bunch of the questions. I was taking notes while you all were discussing. So what you see before you is, and what we're doing here is I'm effectively presenting 2 options. They are fundamentally the same with the exception of the lot 1-2 combination. The primary change to what you were shown is really lot 4. But I will say that, at least, Carlos, it's my recollection that at some point since we did the ordinance, I actually submitted a plan that was that had already removed that drive-through in lot 6, but it may not have gone through. I thought I presented it to the planning commission, but my recollection, it's been 7 years I've been working on this, so you may maybe that didn't happen. But to your point, some of the points you made, and they're not particularly in the order you brought them to me, but I'm looking at my notes, is that, yes, so one thing that we did was we eliminated one of the buildings with a restaurant with a drive-through some years ago. Just didn't fit right, didn't really feel like the right use, was really too traffic intense. And as a result, we shifted the lot 5 office building, which used to be lot 6 north. The reason that you see the parking garage, if you will, wider, is to keep from raising the height. The wider the garage, the less tall it needs to be. And so what we were able to do, we discovered later we had the width, was to do what's called a triple bay garage. And really that width got absorbed on the east side away from the residence. In pursuant to the zoning ordinance, which again, I feel like you saw some iteration of this in the past when we developed a zoning ordinance or we modified the zoning ordinance. As it relates to setbacks, the hotel in our agreement on our zoning needed to be at least 40 feet back if it was 5 stories, or the height of 64 feet. And that's what you actually have, is you have the main part of the building, which is the, if you can see on my screen, the vertical piece here that runs up and down, that's 5 stories. And that is, it touches the 40-foot line at this corner only, slightly, it's actually slightly more. This section of the building, which also is more than 40 feet because the line runs this way, this is all 1 story. It's just not currently labeled in this version. That's the pool, the gym, the outdoor patios. So, you know, to keep with that, we held that. But really, you know, to focus on the more significant change, I think, which is the residential building. So some of the questions I heard talk about the view and the massing. and the use. And so on the use, yes, we had originally contemplated this potentially for retail on the first floor. It's not going to work out that way. It's not ideal for retail that far back. But what we've done in the creation of this plan, which we'll be bringing forward after this next step, first will be the Lot 4 plan, is that what we were able to do is do some things we heard from the Planning Commission in years past that was really something that they thought we should change. Number one, the garage used to be on the Price Road side. There was feedback, I think I remember from Mr. Saunders, that it would really be better design-wise if that garage was flipped to the internal side. So you see that that's been done. That's the box right here. The other thing that we're able to do, and even though, yes, we have residential next to residential, right, is that we're able to cut the building up. And if you see this, if you will, inverted E, what that does is that gives us the ability, A, to honor the request that in this particular building's case, it be no closer than 30 feet, that while this leg and this leg are 30, everything else is significantly farther away. So we pulled the building, if you will, away from the residence, and which I can show you in a rendering in a second. Also recall that the elevation, the first floor elevation of this building, and in this courtyard, for example, is upwards of 12 feet below the property line here. And on top of that property line, we've already agreed to add an 8-foot fence. So what you have is a condition where if you're standing in the courtyard and you're 6 feet tall, to get to 20, you have to get to 20 feet, so 14 feet above the person's head before you can see over the fence, which will occlude the views, if you will, of at least the first floor and most of the second floor of the structure. And we have refrained from placing any balconies facing directly south, as just, you know, trying to be a good neighbor and not have outdoor balconies facing other neighbors. And then really when it comes to the alternate, which is right down here, as I stated through the TIF process and as the city council ratified the redevelopment agreement a week or so ago, there's a lot of rumor in Olivet that the grocery store was given up. And I don't know how many times I have to say to people, that's not actually true. And they say, well, I read it on Nextdoor. Well, I read it on Nextdoor too, but that doesn't mean it's true. And I just am not a person who gets engaged in public social media debates. So I have not answered that publicly on Nextdoor, but I've said it repeatedly in the public. I am doing everything I can to bring our community a grocery store. And the reason I'm supplying you two options is if I can, I will, and this is how I might achieve it. And if I can't, I will reside with the original plan. A couple other things. Traffic, I think Mr. Trejo hit on. Yes, MoDOT did a new analysis of the entire site and all the use groups and found that the traffic volumes actually plummeted from our prior plan because, even including the option with the grocer, because one of the key generators of the traffic were the restaurants with the drive-thrus. And by eliminating those, our traffic volumes and our peak volumes plummeted. And so I have an email, I'm more than willing to pull it up on the screen if you want to see it, from MoDOT that says, you have less traffic, no changes are necessary. Let's see, unit count. Currently, this building's laid out for around 180 units. We're still in schematic design. We'll probably lose a couple of those because we're trying to make sure the units are all rentable and attractive and large enough for people to be comfortable. So, you know, I'd say we'll top out at 180, 181. The parking garage, what we're doing there is we're adding about an extra 50 spaces over the minimum we think is required for for the apartment building, so that all would contain within our height restriction, so that we have that communal parking for the development. So if we get the steakhouse that we're hoping to get on the end cap of this office building, you could have valet parking and you can have the valets running the cars into the garage versus overtaking the surface lots and things like that. Heights. So currently our height limit on lot 4 is 64. I would tell you based on where we are in schematic design, it'll be below that. Exactly the height, can't tell you that yet, but I can guarantee you it will be 64 feet or less. We've done preliminary work on the hotel height. I also believe we'll come in 6, 8 feet below the height there, but again, haven't had the architects design it because we're not ready to build it. So not 100% sure where that'll be, other than 100% sure it'll be 64 feet or less. What else did I see? Oh, let's talk about public spaces. So we are in the midst of refining public spaces as we can. And let me zoom in here. So I'm going to show you in a minute a graphical representation, 3D, of this very large public space area, which connects us to the Centennial Greenway, where we will have a row of fountains that are set into our detention system for a visual, sort of aesthetic element, and a series of, and yet to be specifically designed until we do lot 3. Probably concrete benches along with trees. I envision this area as a place for public outdoor gatherings and concerts. As we refine lot 4, which I hope to bring you in the next couple of weeks, we're looking at this concept of nodes, right? Nodes where neighbors can stop while they're walking and talk. We're trying to come up with a very cool, functional area to possibly sit and congregate around the entry to the apartment building, a rendering which I can show you. This is all green space on the west side, including a dog park. And then this node in this area, this gets changed. This was going to be a walkway straight into the garage. Due to the grades, it's actually going to come in on the side, and then we're going to create some sort of feature here. Again, people can stop, talk, there'll be benches, we'll have decorative lighting, things like that. Again, we haven't fully refined the site plan for every one of the lots. Right now, we're focusing on the conceptual master plan for tonight and the plat while we finish the refinement of the design of lot 4. I'll stop there. And roughly speaking, if you walked within the development without doubling back in any one spot, we will be over a mile of sidewalk, if my calculations are correct, within the development. I would call that, and including the sidewalk along Olive, which will be 12 feet wide from the east end of our project to Hilltop, and 8 feet wide from Hilltop to Price. And last, I'll say, because just new things have been happening every day, we are changing the road name on the south. It's currently Collingwood. We're going to make it Hilltop all the way down and through and straight back. And then the east-west road that runs around and then in front of the office building will be Olive Crossing. That was approved and addressed by the county last week. So with that, before I get to renderings, I'd love to answer any questions if you have any.
I think we should probably see the renderings, as well, and then get a better feel.
All right.
I am curious, for those businesses that you actually have secured already. I thought the hotel was one. If you can tell us if there's any that you can share without leaking anything.
Sure. So other than the hotel, the answer is no. Because let's go back to the difference between here and here, right? I have someone who has a very firm offer that I have not signed for this. The reason I have not signed the offer for this is because I want this. This will not surprise you. This looks a lot like a building that would house a business that predominantly sells food, like a grocery store. So as much as I really like the food that these people sell, I think our community would rather have this use. And so I'm sort of dragging my feet because I'm trying to lock one of these down. Because again, I feel like that's the direction I've heard for 20 years in Olivet. We got to get a grocery back. And I take it as my personal mission to try to do that. All else fails, I feel like this is a good option. But, and whether this building is this big or slightly smaller, I tested my civil in saying, make it as big as you think is logical for this site. As it relates to the hotel, my partner and I are actually the franchisee. So it is a 160 room dual brand Marriott. It'll be 80 rooms of Marriott Courtyard, and 80 rooms of Element by Westin, which we will combine. There'll be 2 lobbies. Let me scroll down here. So the building will be entered. There are things I do know. So this is the courtyard canopy and entry. This is the element entry. The hotel rooms are in the straight up and down part. Again, this whole section over here. Watch this. Oops, let's do that. Just to give you an understanding, everything roughly to the left of this line, make it a better color here. Everything here is one story. The rooms are all in the main sort of wing. But yeah, that's done. We are signed up franchisees, and Marriott's only request, well, not only, plenty of requests, is that we not build the hotel until the office building, we know it'll be, not open the hotel until the office building is closed in and the parking garage is built. They don't want customers driving past a bunch of construction and risking popping tires and things like that. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. All right, so first I want to show you where we currently are in the progress of the look of the apartment building. We're still working on a name right now. I think the marketing team has called it The Res at Olive Crossing. I just want to give you a feel of, what we're looking for here is sort of that, I don't want to call it flash, right? I want to call it definition. I want to call it presence, sense of place. You know where the entry to this building is. And so we're talking about a mix of materials, all of which I believe are permitted by code, but this wood look material is a Nichiha panel. And, we're still playing with it. We probably have 8 different versions. We're trying to settle on one, which I'll have by the time I present it to you. But, giving the building a very calming feel, but a very big sense of place and knowing, again, I'm not going to be confused when I pull up to this building where I enter and the lobbies inside. And then as you can see on the front, we'll have balconies. Let me zoom out here. Here's a view. This is, oops, Bob left these on. So my architect just sent me these. These balconies are gone. I don't know why he sent these to me. But I just got these an hour ago because, again, we're playing with different models. Imagine these are gone because they will be. But side view, and then he didn't draw this in. I tried to give you a feel for it. This is the retaining wall where the elevation of the building drops. And on top of that retaining wall will be the 8 feet. I don't have a scalable drawing to add it, but I just wanted to, for reference sake, make sure you're aware, we still plan to honor that, if you will, requirement / agreement with the neighbors where the code allows 6 feet, but we're going to go to 8 feet site proof. Again, to keep any chance that anybody can see anything that's going on the first floor or second floor of the building. And then just to give you a feel of where our current concept is for the courtyard space. Then, let me show you something else. Now, what you'll notice when I'm about to show you, the colors of the residential building are different because what I just showed you is newer than what this was done a few weeks ago. So this is the site plan. The hotel's up at the top. It's inverted. But what I want to give you a feel for is sort of, and the grades are not fully accurate to scale yet because we're still finishing some of the civil design for the building, but just to give you a feel for the 3D world this would be, right? Sidewalks on both sides of the street, clean lines, rich looking materials, decorative lighting fixtures. And then when it comes to the public space, this is the concept we're going with, right? So we've got this railing here, which will have the fountain behind it, but then a place for people to congregate, sit, bring their lunch if they work in the office building, outdoor live music, things like that. Give you another view from here. So as I mentioned, we connect to the Centennial Greenway, and so we've created an extra wide path in, and we're concepting a whole bank of bike racks, the outdoor dining, the concept for the canopy for outdoor dining at the restaurant, again, haven't set the materials. This is the concept on this sort of retail building on the front. Let's see. Just a look as you drive into the development, just trying to evolve this as we go. Some of these colors and images are upwards of 3 years old. We just haven't gotten to each one of the lots yet. But really creating, as I said, if you trait where my hand's moving, the length of this sidewalk brings you all the way around the property. We've tried to minimize the crossing so you can get from one side to the other. If you come down Price, for example, you can walk all the way across here, cross once, and then cross a second time, and now you're all the way either in the public space or you can get on the Centennial Greenway. So we're trying to be as thoughtful about minimizing pedestrian connections. Over the years, for those who've been on for a while, if you remember, the intersection here was never really that clean. We've cleaned all that up, just trying to make things sensible. As a reminder, the road behind the residential building is for Ameren to service the power lines on the top of the hill, but is one way out only. So we will not be taking traffic in here. This will be an exit only that may be gated off and required to be manually opened. And then, I want to show you. So I mentioned the steakhouse concept. So what we're talking about with the office building is creating a space for restaurants and outdoor seating and outdoor gathering, if you will, above and beyond what you might normally see. Again, haven't fully refined it. Potential for outdoor seating, for a cafeteria, for the office tenant up on the second floor here. We're looking at things, green roofing options. We're just, as we go, we'll develop the specifics. So, yeah. So I think hopefully that answers the questions about public spaces. And as we develop these 2 lots, depending on how that ends up shaking out, we'll do that. The lot 5 is pretty thought out. This big public space here, some space along the north side, a large public space and walkways here, and then the connectivity within the sidewalks.
Can you show us some of the views of the,
Oh,
behind that potential food retail,
You mean here?
No, go to the northwest.
Here.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so if this was the plan versus the grocer?
Right. Oh, I thought you had the grocery store already included.
No, we haven't 3D modeled that yet because I don't have anybody locked in yet to model. So I'm trying to actually do that as we speak. I may have a new model for that in the 3D in about 2 weeks as of some stuff that happened yesterday. So, in this case, you would just see the building move farther to the east to allow for the trucks to get in, which we would screen, and the retail building would actually face east toward the entry.
The only one concern that I'd have is, usually the back of these stores are never kept up real clean or nice. And that's kind of a main focal point right at that main intersection. So I'm just curious about how you're proposing, addressing, that.
So how we'd address that is what we would do is, let me go back to, I'll show you, hold on. Let me go back to where the hell's the PDF? Hold on, let me find it. Oops, I gotta get out of this. Let's go to here. Got it. Okay. Too many files open on 2 monitors. Okay, so let's blow this up a little bit here. Oops. Okay. So in the event this were the configuration, this anywhere from about here, if you can see my pointer, I can draw on it. This entire line would be heavily screened. So the elevation of this area would be below the sidewalk. I think it's estimated to be upwards of 5 feet. So you'll have it below grade, and then we'll screen the entire perimeter because yes, it's got to, you have to get deliveries. right? I don't think we want deliveries facing the apartment building, and I don't think we want deliveries facing Olive. And we can hide them a lot better in this area with fencing and screening in between the sidewalk and the paved area. So that's our plan. Again, once I have a user, which I hopefully will have soon, we'll design it and obviously submit it for your consideration at that time.
Gotcha. Well, I am concerned about that, and I'm sure there's other questions or, commission members that would have, might have some other questions. Or do you have any more visual items, or photos or renderings that you want to go through?
I think I covered, let's see if there was anything else. I showed you the 3 slides of the apartment, the 2 site plans, the 3D. I want to, I want to give you a feel on the 3D on something. Hold on, here we go. Okay. So the way that we've thought about the courtyard area, again, besides my earlier reference to a 6-foot tall person and at the top of the wall it being 20 feet, is we're placing a barrier of some probably brick structure in between the pool. So you have the pool, the hot tub, and then what amounts to really a sound wall. And yet, as you can see, and it's tough because this is all digital, and this is not as high as it should be. This fence will actually be up here. We are so far below the neighbors, and the homes are upwards of 150 feet from the property line that, laws of physics, sound can't go up, over, and around a fence. So we're going to be containing our activity below the grade, 150 feet or more away from our neighbors, and have instituted what will actually also be, an impervious to sound surface aside from the 12-foot retaining wall and the 8-foot fence. So I just wanted to give you, we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can with our neighbors about as many pieces of this design as possible. And so that's why we chose to locate this here. So now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody on commission have any questions or comments for Greg? I got a couple, and I'll go ahead and start off, I guess. Do you have any new cross sections that kind of show the, kind of the view from the residents, on, for this apartment building, just to kind of get an idea of the impact of it?
Well, hold on, I think I might in my stills section. Hold on, I think. Yeah, okay, let me reshare again.
Good.
All right, so Andre, my 3D guy, so he's taken the topography from the available USGS maps. So if you, oops, there we go. I can only zoom in so far, and he couldn't really render the people's houses. So he just took the grades. But what you see, if you go there, is they have most all the neighbors from Stony Side have a dense tree canopy on their northern side, which sits between their homes and the building. And so what you'll see are broken up sections. If you're in their backyard, first of all, you have to look over an 8-foot fence. So they're going to have to look up at any part of the building, unless they are on a second floor of a home. And I have that with my neighbors, right? I have a second floor of my house. My neighbor's house actually sits 8 feet lower than mine. And so I can see over the top of their house. So, this is an extra floor or 2 above that. But we're again, minimizing it so that there are windows and we're eliminating balconies on the south side for that specific reason.
Where would the houses be approximately? Is that what the gray spots are?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is the footprint of a house. So we're looking really through at one point.
So we're kind of at the front yard.
Yeah, I'd say you're about the front of a house.
Could you zoom in to kind of get back to where the back of the yard would be?
This is as far as the zoom lets me go on my I'm scrolling my mouse. It's not moving any farther. I mean, I can show you here. Let me see. Let's go back to, let's go here. Oh, so that's, you know, just to give you,
Yeah.
right? So everything's going on. So you're looking at it blocks about a story and a half at grade. But when we come to bring in this specific building for review, I'll absolutely bring in cross sections once we've got the height set, have it laid out relative to the distance to the back doors, standard 6-foot height person, things like that.
And I'm also not an acoustics, engineer or anything like that, but I'm just wondering about the potential echoing effect that you can get, with that apartment building and the walls and, stuff like that. So
And I
maybe,
think,
go ahead, Brian.
well, and I think, and you addressed it, but I think it is interesting. It'll be interesting to hear from the neighbors, but, it does change. Now it's a weekend activity when people are out in the pool and during the day and noise. And I don't know acoustics well enough to know 150 feet in a wall, can it, carry or not? But I'd be kind of curious from a sound perspective if the city can look at anything like that.
Well, just remember, sound travels in a linear path. So if you're 20 feet below the top of the fence, even if you're 6 feet tall and you scream, right, it bounces back and forth between the wall and the building and then ends up deflecting and reducing in sound. And, I hear my neighbors when they're out in their backyard too. These are going to be resident neighbors of Olivet, right? I mean, if they're fellow residents and they're outside talking, it'd be just like if there was an adjoining subdivision. I mean, an apartment building is not a noise machine. They're just people.
No, I understand that, but I also don't believe that, I think you think that the noise travels linear, but once it reaches the top of the wall, it will, radiate down. I mean, it doesn't go up and around. You're deflecting a lot of the sound, and that's right. But, what the sound that you have at the very top of that wall will, kind of spread out, down below it too. So maybe you got an acoustics person or a community noise person that knows more than me, and that would be great. But
I mean, the only way that's going to happen is if I engage a sound study and,
I think you could have some quick discussions with them. It doesn't have to be a study right now. I mean, until we know for sure. But I don't think that necessarily putting, if you're saying you're behind the 8-foot wall, that you're not going to hear anything.
well, you're behind a 12-foot with another 8-foot above it.
So, but you're saying that you're not going to hear anything, and I think you will.
I'm sorry. You may actually hear something. One thing I'll tell you from an acoustics perspective that's going to benefit all the properties along this side is that they won't hear the highway in between, for all building structures that are in between them and the highway,
Well, no, that's a very good point.
which is what the neighbors in Price Meadows found out when I built Price Crossing. They were concerned about noise. And then afterwards they said, wait a minute, we can't hear Olive anymore. Right. 2-story structures are wonderful sound barriers. So yeah, I can, what I'll do is see if I can find some relevant statistical data on acoustic sound generation averages in apartment complexes. There's probably a metric for that online.
And I mean, what kind of is the apartment complex? Is it geared towards a specific age, group, like, younger singles versus, families?
No, I mean, we are building a quality mid to upper priced product with a very robust amenity package, workout room, yoga room, club room, private rooms you can use for Zoom calls. So this will range from singles to retired couples. I think there's, under the current floor plan, 8 or 10 3-bedroom units. Majority of the units are 1 bedroom. Whether that'll be singles or couples, my partners and I in the developments they have generally have above average occupancy because they provide a quality product with great service.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I just want to note that on any project, it's not, they're not going to be under a dome of silence. So, there may be some noise exiting from the site. It's possible, but it's with any developer, you want them to do as much as possible without, we can't expect our businesses along Olive Street Road to create sound domes. I mean, that's just to enclose them. I mean, it's just not gonna happen.
Agreed.
There is some noise.
I guess I would agree with that, and there's no way it shouldn't be, and neighbors absolutely are fair. I'm just calling out there's a difference, and I think it goes through the process and it goes through the motion and the hearings, that a difference on a weekend on a Saturday in July with an office building versus a pool with potentially 40, 50 people outside enjoying themselves, which is great and wonderful, is just different. And that's, I think, what I'm calling out as well.
Absolutely. What else can I answer?
Do you-
And I'll bring you a ton of detail on the Lot 4 building when we're bringing the site plan in.
Can you pull up the view of that backside of that apartment building? I guess the southern view of it.
You're
The
talking
whole-
about this one or the still?
Well, I'd love to see a kind of an elevation view of that building, so I can kind of see what the parking garage is going to look like as well.
Oh, all right. So the parking garage, let's go over here. So it's a precast garage, probably 4 levels, all grade and up. It'll have interior bike racks. We're going to have multi-port electronic charging stations, things like that.
Do you have a view of the south face?
I don't think in this. Let me look, hold on. I'm looking at thumbnails, sorry. What's this? Nope, that's not it. No. It was up to Andre where he put these data points. Yeah, it doesn't look like I do. I mean, it'll be effectively it's going to be a parking garage. It's gray, it's concrete.
So the look that we're seeing right here is going to be the same look as what we're going to see on the south face.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll get you a more photorealistic, accurate one once our architect renders the actual building. Again, this is the old color scheme, things like that. But we'll, I'm looking at what I've told them is I want to tint the concrete sort of a richer gray. And then it'll have interior LED lighting. Again, when it comes to any one, because tonight's really about the overall plan. Know that we will have a foot candle study for every lot. We will not, shed light onto our neighbors. Everything will be shadow boxed. It's all directionally controlled LED. I mean, the technology now is great. So it's not a question of if, it will just be done that way.
Right. Good. I think Carlos mentioned something that you had some diagrams or photos of more of some of those community spaces as well. I think that you did some more.
Yeah, this stuff.
And yeah, but maybe some of the other nodes that you talked about.
No, this is the primary. So the two major nodes or community spaces are the east side along the basin that runs a couple of 100 feet along the restaurant. Again, the parking and for the bikes that we talked about and seating and so forth. And then the north side of the office building, which that area really runs the entire north length of the building. So you can see, again, we haven't set these tables specifically in the plan or designed this building architecturally, but, contemplating larger public spaces. And then the third one,
Would those be public spaces or would those be spaces for the restaurant?
So if they're tables for the restaurant, then they're for the restaurant. But again, it's kind of like here at Price Crossing. Fallon's has its tables, Sugar Fire has its tables, but when the restaurants are closed, they're public, anybody sits there, people, when Starbucks was open, grab their coffee and sit at a Sugar Fire table. So I'll call it quasi-public. The area by the fountain, fully public, other than for the patio space. And then we're working on, just to give you a concept of this node at this corner, this is not right because there's some grading issues here, and this walkway actually goes away because of the grade, so you come around this way. But we're talking about, again, that sort of collector space, right? Where does the mom and the two moms and the two strollers stop, sit on a park bench, have a nice, mocha latte and enjoy the weather? And that's there because, again, remembering we're thinking about this, one, about the commitments we've made to the city relative to making this a resident-free development. I mean, a resident-friendly development, not resident-free. And number two, we're gonna have residents, we're gonna have new residents of Olivet, which I think personally excites me, right? It's growth of our community. So we're looking at this from the standpoint of, if you're gonna choose to live in our building, what are we providing you, right? Providing you walkability to restaurants, hopefully walkability to a grocery store, access to the Centennial Greenway, places you can go for a walk, go for a jog. And if you can do a mile loop inside the development without ever leaving it, well, that's fabulous, right? Because then you don't get onto Price or Olive. So, yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments for Greg at this time? Okay, let's go ahead and maybe see if we have any public comments.
Yes. Chairman, I do, and bear with me 1 second as I try to Mr. Smith, I'm going to transfer Scott Smith, promote him to panelist. Mr. Smith, if you can state your name and address and have your audio and video on, be greatly appreciated.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold on. Okay. I live at 193 Stoneleigh Towers. My name is Scott Smith. I'm an adjacent neighbor to this project. I'm at the southwest corner lot, and I have a few questions about what's being presented. The diagram that I'm looking at sort of suggests that Locust Road would still remain. Is that true or not?
No, Locust Lane would be vacated in the process.
But it shows on the diagram that it's
drive back there.
Okay, but it shows that it's present there, right? That there's something there.
Yeah,
It
so
looks like a road to me. Is that true or not?
Mr. Smith, that's a access road mandated by Ameren so that they can get their trucks back there to service the power poles, so they don't have to come through your and others' yards, because the poles will be above the fence line. And so we have to put in a 15-foot wide lane there for Ameren, for fire access. It'll be one way out only, and for service and deliveries only. It will not be available for use as the public. And again, it'll be exit only.
Yeah, I think there's a grade problem there when it leaves exits onto Price Road, but I want to move on. This area where the building, or lot 4 is, used to be residential. It's been residential for 90 years. And when it got rezoned, the feeling is that it's all right to move development like this incredibly close to the neighbors' lots. I would prefer, and I'd hope the commission would move the south face of these buildings, especially the western one, 30 feet north. It looks like there is some grass area, planted area where those dots are, and where the bottom part of the E is. If that could be moved north, I think would make for a much better neighbor than what's being proposed. In addition, I would say is I think this multi-story residential thing would actually be a much better building if it was simply moved north to lots 1 and 2, with the potential of using what is claimed to be a grocery store on level 1 with retail. And I'd also recommend, if that were done, that you could add 1, 2, or 3 additional stories vertically. You know, if you get it away from the neighbors aren't really too concerned about that distance, and would give the developer more opportunity to have more units. And what could happen to lot 4 is the southern half could be planted with trees because it's rough terrain, it's hilly. You wouldn't have to excavate it. And the northern part of lot 4 could be additional parking. If you, right now, it looks to me like the plan requires a trenching right at the southern property line, which will kill all the trees along that easement and on our property, which I object to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate your comments.
And one more question.
Yeah.
I would like to submit a document more technical with regards to the damage to the trees. Can I send that to Carlos?
That'd be great.
As part of this?
Yeah, Carlos, would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And I believe you have my email, and if not.
Yeah, I can get that to you, Carlos. I'll do that later tonight. Thank you.
Good, good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, do we have any more comments, Carlos?
Bear with me.
No worries. And I see a hand raised on your screen.
All right, that hand is actually mine, and there we go. Okay.
Good, good, good.
So I have 2 more attendees. If anybody else would like to address the commission, if you can show your hand. And Chairman, I see none.
Okay, good, good. All right. Greg, I mean, have you guys looked at that? You know, the issues with the trees, or the idea of putting the apartment building on 1 or 2? I mean, I'm sure you guys.
That is an absolutely terrible idea. You know, with all due respect to Mr. Smith, I'm a real estate developer. Mr. Smith, and I can appreciate his position. He wants the building away from his house. We, in a prior meeting with all of you, agreed to setting this building a minimum of 30 feet away. And what we've done versus the old concept, which was a monolithic office building and parking garage, is chop this thing up into this E to pull the structure away. There's only so many things I can do, but, you know, resetting our entire model is the retail space goes on the front. You know, it's an oversimplification to say that you can move the apartment building north and then put the grocery store underneath it. You end up with all kinds of problems around parking. What we've done in this concept, again, assuming I can get the grocer I'm trying to get, one of the things the neighbors had concerns about in a prior version were the deliveries of the grocery store and the noise and the semis. Well, we put the apartment building between the deliveries and them, right? We've shielded them from that. So I appreciate what he has to say. As it relates to trees, you know, we're going to develop our property under the law as we're allowed to. It's not our intent to kill any trees, but yes, we are going to cut that hill down 12 feet in some cases. Just so you're aware, there is a 12-foot common strip of Stoneleigh Towers owned property between us and all of the residents. And so, you know, do we intend to kill trees? Absolutely not. In the excavation on our land, which we're entitled to do, if that somehow hurts a root system, there's nothing I can do about that. I can't modify my development over a tree. So I wouldn't say, I would say to Mr. Smith's point, is some tree damage possible? Sure. Is it guaranteed? Absolutely not. Is it 100% going to kill everything, I think that's unlikely. It's, you know, all depends on the, you know, I could pull up surveys and show you where every single tree is, and it's not like they're all on the property line. They are inset quite a bit. So I appreciate his input, but his suggestions are not commercially reasonable in the world of development.
Nope, just was curious to see if you guys thought about it, and you
Absolutely.
know, it was, I figured you did, but that's what I was.
After 7 years, I have thought of every possible way to skin this cat. And I think this is the best one, to be perfectly honest, for everybody. It's sustainable, you know, it's the things we talked about at the TIF commission, which is what we build here now becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem of residents, commerce, you know, the lodging, business and retail, which feeds not only itself, but it feeds our entire community. And my hope is, I keep saying feed because I really am trying to do everything. I'm saying grocery a lot to try to dispel all the rumors on the internet that I've given up, because I don't know if I said this earlier 18 times. I haven't. So, you know, and tonight my hope would be that if you are so inclined, that you would consider moving to approve the optional AB site plan amendment. As we continue to move forward with our development. But that, of course, is up to all of you.
Are you going to do anything more with the barrier in between the residents and the development?
Well, we're doing 8 feet. That's what at one point they asked us for. So it'll be site proof. It'll be in, you know, in sections, but it'll be uniform. It'll look a lot like a highway wall, those sound walls. It'll be a sound resistant, soundproof material. It'll actually be some sort of composite. I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you or others, but for example, Mr. Smith had requested a brick wall the entire 1,500 linear feet. A couple challenges with that. One, the grades change, brick's a problem. 2, at some point that fence is going to be 12 feet over a retaining wall. That's just, you can't anchor that weight and spread that load safely. So we went with a composite material that can be done safely and installed.
I guess I was meaning more about landscaping, you know, things like that, you know.
We'll heavily landscape our side of it. I can't landscape their property.
Right.
So inside ours, there'll be tons of landscaping. Yeah. But again, the fence will be 8 feet tall on their side.
Right.
20 feet from my side.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, because I'm not sure. I'm pausing a little bit just because I want to get a chance to digest these changes a little bit myself. And I'm not sure of how everybody else feels on the commission. And I'm just wondering if I'm just not sure I'm ready to vote right now. And I'm just curious about, maybe you guys can help convince me. You know, my gut feel, well, I don't know. I just would like to hear some other people's opinions on some of these things.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this and listened to the developer talk tonight. And I really believe that he has considered his options and that we have given this a great deal of scrutiny over time, and that I'm ready to make the motion at this point.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with you. It's not that I'm opposed to anything specifically. I think it's that we spend so much time in the initial site plan review. We spent many sessions and weeks reviewing, and you know, these are significant changes. I don't disagree. They're probably well thought out and they're likely the right approach in the end. It's a lot to take in at one time versus previously, I think, when we did this over many sessions. You know, I want to be cognizant of the impact of maybe waiting 2 weeks, what that does to people, but you know, some of the open questions that we've raised as well. So, you know, I tend to give pause like you as well, but for not per particular, like I have major objections, but just
Agreed.
digestion.
Agreed. It's kind of like trying to get myself caught back up to speed with what, with everything that, what our thought process was before and, things like that.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I just wanted to make a note that it is not uncommon on a redevelopment project as it moves forward and begins to, tweak their own design, that they come into a planning commission with changes from their initial concepts that were approved.
No, I totally get it, but it does change some of the,
I just wanted to make a note of that.
no, I agree. Jody, how are you feeling?
I'm not with Carol, I think. I mean, I think Greg has thought this out and I'm sure he's beat his head against the brick wall trying to figure out the best way to do this.
Right.
And
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, I just, maybe this grocery store will be called Yowitz's. Julie's.
I was curious, Greg, if you had a picture of yourself in any of the renderings.
Not that I'm aware of. I didn't make them. And look, I want to say, and if you all choose to wait, you all choose to wait on this. But one key thing I want to talk about process-wise, what I'm showing you right now are the conceptual site plans for each lot, really the use groups. And, we already have some defined rails. For example, the apartment building has to be at least 30 feet away from that property line. The hotel has to be at least 40 feet away. Your office building, I'm not worried about. It's like 100 feet away. Part of the way that Carlos designed this process is this is just sort of what it could be, but you are not actually approving a specific line or any really, as I see it, and Carlos, feel free to correct me, but when I bring in the site plan for lot 4 with the architectural renderings and all of the specific details, that's when we frame up the decision around the lot and the things where you can, get more specific. Right now, these are conceptual 3Ds. The hard lines are coming. And so what I'm seeking your approval for tonight really is more conceptual than specific. And again, as my recollection is, at some point in the past 3 years, I presented a drawing for lot 5 that's very similar to what lot 5 is, other than the garage and the hotel. And the only change tonight of significance, as I recall again, is lot 4. So it is completely all of your decision whether you vote tonight. But again, you're not actually giving me the green light. You're just saying this is the layout until I submit my site plans.
Well, I don't remember anything coming in that was, what I remember what we last looked at before was, I think what Carlos, pulled up originally. So,
Commissioner, Chairman, I think, and I agree with you, like my concern is not the small tweaks to the hotel or the restaurant, the changing from the, front grocer to the drive-through or trying to get to the grocery. It's more the swap of the office building to the residential. And I completely respect that you stay within the 63 feet or the 30-foot boundaries. And that totally makes sense. And I agree. We're just authorizing, we're not changing any of those things. I think it's more that we're changing the concept of what's there in a larger perspective. That's the only thing that's a lot to take in at one time, if that makes sense. But I'm not disagreeing that we're not changing any of the parameters that you still would have to work in. And I respect that you stay within those.
Mr. Chairman?
yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I can tell you that in my experience, retail always wants the frontage property.
Right.
Greg's absolutely right. I mean, it's not, swapping them is not realistic from a market perspective.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to hear it from Greg and hear what, their thoughts were and how they, what their ideas were. So, and I do appreciate the fact that you are pushing the majority of the mass away. I think that's great.
Excuse me.
I would be curious, the idea is to try to be respectful neighbors and stuff like that too. So, just when they do come in with your site plans and stuff like that, I think it would be, whatever you can do to kind of minimize that impact, to them, I think is kind of what we're going to be looking for, um, as well. And if there's creative ideas or things like that, that you could be good neighbors and save trees, I think you should consider that, if there's something creative. Okay. I'm not saying, I totally respect the idea that it's your property and stuff like that. And, that's your, to make this work. But if there are things that can be done,
Oh,
you
sure.
know,
Yeah, I mean, look, one, just to be clear, all the trees on my property are gone. It's completely clear to the property line. So, the trees Mr. Smith is worried about are within his property, or within the easement of the subdivision, which we are not going to touch, right? We're only working on our side line. And again, you wouldn't have wanted to be on the phone call, which, well, there'll be another one because I didn't have time to review the slides that my architect sent me today. And I yelled at them a week ago when I found the balconies facing south.
right.
So the fact that they gave those to me without thinking, we'll have a conversation. I'm doing the absolute best I can, and I will tell you, and I hope you appreciate this in the way that I mean it. No matter what I do, it will not be enough with the neighbors. Like it just never is. I do development, right? Whenever you do development, the neighbors always want more than you can actually give, and don't always give you credit for what you have done. And just, to sort of roll back time, remember or know that the 30-foot setback and the 40-foot setback we've agreed to are in excess of what is required under the current code. This 8-foot fence is taller than what's required. The balconies could be on. So we've been doing this along the way. New changes, I will tell you, are extremely unlikely beyond what I've been able to do so far. But I feel like we've done a lot. We've been listening for 7 years, granted for the residential, only about a year since this came up. But I think it also speaks volumes that of all the neighbors impacted by this development, of which there are, I don't know, let's say 7, only one of them chose to come on tonight. There's not mass abject upheaval from the neighborhood that I'm aware of. They all know how to find me. They all have my cell phone number. It's all over the place. So, just sort of pointing that out, just sort of to contextualize things.
Right. Tim, you've been quiet. What's your thoughts?
I wasn't around when you guys originally voted this, so it's all kind of new to me. I know about the development. I read the plans and everything. I don't see much of a difference. I definitely agree that once this does come back up to the commission, that we will need to look at the balconies where they face it. Same thing with the other one, maybe screenings on the balconies so they don't look right into the neighbors' properties, something like that. But as of the conceptual, I do not see a problem with voting on that today. And I don't think it puts us in a bind as a commission either, to let them go ahead and build the whole entire thing.
Okay. Brian, are you still feeling pause? I'm feeling a little bit better, and just, so if
I think it's more just because it's new and again, I don't doubt that this has been thought out. I don't doubt it's probably going to end up being this way. And I guess the question I would have, Carlos, is, or maybe you can answer, is when were the neighbors notified? And have they had time to think about it? If they have any concerns? Obviously, if we have someone here, I assume they knew ahead of time. I'm just kind of curious, just trying to think of the neighborhood in that regard. It doesn't mean I don't think it's well thought out or you've done above and beyond. All that can be true. It's more just that it's switched and just processing that.
Carlos, can you answer any of those questions?
Yeah, there's 2 components to it, though. The traditional notification for when the petition came in was dispersed by staff. We traditionally will notify property owners within 300 feet. I made the decision that we were going to notify everybody in Stoneleigh Towers and everyone along Price Road up to, I believe it was East Villa. and then everybody in Price Meadows. I think it's a fair, I know I'm not going to capture everyone, but I think it was a fair decision to pursue. But on the other end of it, I mean, this has been an advertised change since, and we've had people calling about and expressing their comments since, you know, winter. The TIF process started, I don't recall the specific dates, but I think they were back in December into January and such, and there were comments expressed by neighbors and residents of Olivet throughout, and those meetings were public. And even once the commission makes its decision to act, it still will go to council, and the council will still hold a public hearing. So I just
I
wanted to
think, Carla, I guess you're saying that obviously people have known about it for months, and so this isn't anything that is obviously catching anyone off guard, and I appreciate that, and that helps, you know.
No, and I just wanted to make clear, because there are the question is, you know, yes, we have done our standard notification in there, and I kind of went over that, but you know, there's been more out there than just that. I mean,
Good. Okay. Have we covered a lot of the comments that have already been expressed and made, or are we missing anything that's already been voiced? Carlos?
Chairman, if I understood correctly, and this is the opportunity to make note on those, but the commission, it's about the message and being, it's my role to make sure that the commission is listening and is empathetic to the concerns of the neighboring properties, whether they're voiced or not. There are adjacent parcels through here, and you know, it's the developer and the commission to identify the steps that are being conducted to try to mediate whether it was a change of the original project. Our strategic plan indicates that this is one of the challenges we're going to face, whether this was a 1-story to a 20-story, development. The proximity of single-family residential properties along the Olive Boulevard corridor are never going to go away. It doesn't matter whether it's here or it's at Old Bonham and Olive. That we have very shallow depths, and the comprehensive plan recognizes that and notes that the commission needs to take that into account. In doing so, we have developed Chapter 428. We have developed buffer requirements. We've developed the screening wall. And then in addition to that, we've created this process, this PDD process. One of its goals is to provide flexibility. And that flexibility bends both ways, both for the developer and the development community, to be nimble, to be reactive and to be responsive. And then also for the city, through the commission, through the council, to be more proactive and to make sure that design considerations are incorporated into this development. I think, what I've heard today of the orientations of the buildings, the carve outs, the balconies, the buffer wall, the elevations, the landscaping, the neighbors' trees, note that we hear and we are sensitive to that issue in there, and that when the plan comes in for the design level, the details, it's all in the details. I mean, there is expectations here that we hope that the developer, Mr. Yowitz, would consider to address. Again, we still have not seen a landscape plan, but at this point, at a concept or at a master plan level, we don't need to see that. But I think the commission's made it clear that there are some additional expectations in there to help mitigate, whether it's height, whether it's sound, whether it's views, in that process. And we'll see as we get into the next phase. And I hope that Mr. Yowitz has taken note to some of these comments that the commission's expressed. And again, I don't think that there is, we will strive for a win-win scenario, but it will be difficult to try to obtain that.
Right. Understood. I just meant the original question that I had was, were there any complaints that were voiced to you that haven't been voiced in this meeting?
No, nothing unique or different than what I've heard either since the petition's been in play or during the tax increment financing process.
Okay, good. Okay.
Sorry about that. I gave you a long-winded answer.
No, it was a great overview and I'm glad you did it. You know, I think it was good. So, all right, I guess, do I hear a motion at this point?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to make a motion. Carlos, I do want to check something on Exhibit B1. Does that authorize the options, or is the developer going to have to come back?
No, that would authorize these two scenarios within the master development plan. Now, once, whether it's lot 1 and 2 or lot 1, or lot 2 or lot 4, each one of those individually are going to have to come back to the commission
Right.
for like a community design review. We call it the design review of that process.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion to forward a recommendation to the City Council to amend ordinance number 2675 so as to replace the existing master development plan under existing B1 with the revised master development plan authorizing multifamily residential on lot 4 as presented before the commission on and per the staff memorandum dated May 20, 2021, subject to any additional conditions approved by the commission.
I second.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner and seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, you please call the roll call vote.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved. Okay.
Passes unanimously. Again, the next step in this process is, this is a recommendation. This recommendation would then be forwarded for consideration, but for the city council. Not sure what the June schedule, the dates are set, but which June meeting it would be scheduled.
Good. Now, Carlos, item number C, Olivet Crossing subdivision final plat. Is that, was that part of this, or this is a different, this is a different item, right?
It would be a different item. It's associated with the development,
Right.
but a different action item in here. And this is the final plat. One of the goals of staff as we're getting into the permitting process, both for grading and hopefully built and eventually to the building construction, is that the existing parcels that comprise the 14 acres still exist. The goal has been to encourage the developer to consolidate the 14-acre property into either one parcel or to reflect the lots that are illustrated in the master development plan. And that is what the petitioner has chosen to submit. This would identify the 6 lots proposed in the master development plan and then get formally recorded through St. Louis County. The county would then identify parcel identification and addresses in that process.
Bless you.
Actually, the county's already addressed it. It'd be attached to this, but the GIS department's already assigned addresses to the lots. This is a point of reference.
so Carlos, we need a motion on this?
Yes, and that motion is part of your packets, or I have it up on the screen. And again, this is part of a legal process to actually legally create those proper parcels and eliminate the current ones that exist.
Now, Carlos, that drawing shows preliminary. Is that still okay with that? Or-
Yes.
Do we need to have that say final plat or,
It should say final plat and we'll get that corrected in the submission.
okay. Good.
Apologies if I didn't pick it up.
No worries. I just saw it on the drawing. I just wanted to, before we approved preliminary, I wanted to make sure we were looking at the final thing.
It's
Okay.
the preliminary final.
Yeah.
It's preliminary until you vote on it, then it's final. There you go.
I didn't realize that's how it went.
Once it becomes a Mylar and I sign it and the city signs it and we record it, then it's done.
Right.
And you can sign it, Rob. Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I would like to go ahead and make the motion.
That'd be great.
I'd like to motion to forward a recommendation to the city council to approve a 6-lot subdivision to be known as Olive Crossing subdivision as presented before the commission on and per the staff memorandum dated May 20, 2021, subject to conditions approved by the commission.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Brian Lewis. All right. Carlos, you please call the roll call vote.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
And the motion passes unanimously. The final subdivision plat is also an item that will go for final action by the city council.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time. Have a good evening, and I'll be back soon and many times coming up in the next 6 to 9 months. To all kinds of cool stuff to show you.
All right, good. We look forward to it. Okay, we'll move on to item D, text amendment, chapter 422, stormwater management, article 4, review and approval. Section 422.080, single family residential development. Petition type is a text amendment in consideration of changes to a new single family residential development, detention requirements for subdivisions. The petitioner is the city of Olivet. Property owner is the city of Olivet. Carlos?
Chairman, we had this discussion in previous meetings regarding the detention requirements for new single-family properties that are part of a new subdivision. And this is more specific to what we found out during the Birdie Lane subdivision. So in the past, we adopted chapter 422 because new construction, specifically the tear down and rebuild of a new home, had several challenges or presented several challenges on how to deal with stormwater. And many of the homes were either located in areas that there were no defined or formal detention systems or areas in place, or basically everything was to get to an inlet and then go down through a piping system, a creek or such. So chapter 422 placed a requirement that a on-site detention system would be required for every new single-family home, that detention system would be sized in proportion to the entire roof area of the new home for for a rain event that MSD commonly used, and I think it's a 15-year, 20-minute storm. I always get those two confused. 15-year, 20-minute rain event. And period. So every new home would have to provide that, whether the new home was smaller in impervious area or more impervious area than what previously existed. Two we get to today. So Birdie Lane subdivision, which is also being reviewed by the Metropolitan Sewer District, will have a full subdivision detention system, both a two-component type where it channels water and removes the impurities and then gets it into a detention area. Then it's released into the underground infrastructure system. That system is designed to take into account what was represented in the subdivision plat, all the roof areas in the subdivision, all the driveways in the subdivision, all the identified patios in the subdivision, and then the entire street and sidewalk system of that subdivision. So in this case, the current chapter 422 was somewhat applying the twofold this detention requirement in there. When you go through the Birdie Lane subdivision, it goes through an assumption that a specific amount of area will be built out, and that built out is illustrated in those building footprints, which represent side entry garages with turnarounds, the sizable homes that were laid out there, and then a standard patio. Now, similar to the discussion we just had, this is their concepts. It's just a master plan, and these homes and shapes will change, but they won't be that. They should not be as significant changes that it would alter the detention requirements. So the question here is, is it fair for the city to require additional detention for a new single-family home in the Birdie Lane subdivision for that roof area in accordance to Chapter 422, when the MSD plans and the detention system that is required by MSD already takes that into account? So, or is it kind of double dipping on detention in that process? We had some discussion. There was some mixed feelings about that and what I've drafted were 3 different scenarios for the commission to begin discussions and start to consider. One scenario, well, in all 3 scenarios, there would be an exception that would be authorized by the commission through site plan review. So, through a site plan review process, it is not a guarantee. It is a decision that is made solely by the commission. And in doing so, the commission today would take consideration of one of the 3 options. One is to exempt the home completely because the detention that's being provided for MSD already takes that into account. 2, reduce the on-site detention by at least 50% of the entire roof area. And 3, just to require some additional BMPs to take into account to where some of these discharges, whether it's the sump pump or the gutter placement would be.
Sorry, BMP, you said?
Yes, best management practices. BMPs represent like your rain gardens or your landscape gardens and things of that nature. Is a technical term on that. Sorry about that. So that's what it's been written. And again, as the commission considers this, there are some fundamental things that are consistent through each of these options. One is it would provide an opportunity for an exemption, but that exemption is not necessarily guaranteed. And the process to consider that exemption would be through the site plan review process. The site plan review process is an opportunity for the commission to take considerations impact within the lot and the surroundings, the area surrounding the lot, and therefore give the commission more flexibility to require additional conditions in there.
Carlos, I got a question for you. Are they using the same storm data?
It was my understanding, yes, and I did have a representative earlier on in here, but there was a scheduling conflict that they were going to have. But it was my understanding that yes, and I can pull out the Birdie Lane plans and verify that. So bear with me 1 second.
I guess I'm curious. I'm sorry, Chairman. Is it okay?
No, go ahead, Brian.
I guess I'm not sure. Are we saying that we're voting for one of the 3 options, or we're authorizing any of the 3 to be used during site plan review?
So the intent would be for the commission to consider one of those 3 as part of the amendment.
Okay, and I guess maybe my concern is that it gets a little binary then, in that sometimes house by house, you might say, oh, well, it doesn't meet, but it's really close. So maybe one we'd be okay with an exception, whereas another one's blatantly, off and tearing down trees. And so we'd want the other. Are we boxing ourselves in a corner by not having options, or is that legally we need to have one way and that's just the way it is?
Well, I think there's a way to mitigate that. If somebody comes in and creates a house that has twice as much, impermeable space, or area than what was originally designed. Maybe we come up with the idea that they have to capture that in their own detention system in their yard, if you will, to address, kind of like if people do an addition, they tend to have to do that. It's an idea, it's a thought. I mean, I do think we definitely are doubling up on retention. If they already have basically a subdivision-wide system in place that is already encompassing the roof areas, as well. I think that there's a way to address the individual changes.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
question for Carlos. When MSD is doing its calculations for stormwater detention, are they using the same stringent standard that we do?
And that is the question that the Chairman Jorgel was asking, is because that standard would be, what is the rain event, the 15-year, 20-minute storm? And we did adopt that standard because that was the MSD standard. And then what is the extent of impervious area that would be considered? And at that point, they're considering the proposed house footprints as illustrated in the subdivision plat. But in addition to that, the MSD, through MSD, they're also considering, bear with me 1 second here. They're also taking into account the driveways, the driveway turnarounds, the little patios, and the street as a whole. And
So,
it's being designed for 100% of that impervious area.
okay, so they are indeed taking each house and saying, assuming it's 100% impervious under the roof like we do.
That is correct.
Okay.
The only caveat that I would note is that, again, similar to the master development plan, the assumption is that the house is going to be sized like about what's illustrated here. The whole building area extends, up to 20% of the lot depth. It could be this big, but it's extremely rare that we ever have a house that's built to all the setbacks.
Okay, so they're doing their calculations based on the developer's concept of what they're going to do.
Correct.
Okay.
Tim had a question. Go ahead.
So am I thinking about this right? So if you have a subdivision that has all the detention going into one area, just like Birdie Lane, and it accounts for the roof line and everything and all the different structures, but if you take it away from the individual houses, let's take Birdie Lane, the houses behind them, that's going to get the detention that would be beneficial to have the detention on each individual house. Those people would be suffering from going to just MSD. Am I thinking about that correctly?
I thought everything was directed, all the impervious area was directed to that subdivision retention system. You're talking about runoff from the yards into the other adjacent houses, right?
Exactly.
And we never calculate that in our stormwater, We did
Which I understand, but wouldn't it not help those people, the neighbors behind them, if you had that detention system on the individual houses versus one big one for the actual subdivision?
Mhm.
Not necessarily. The way the current topography extends into the property. Let me get one of the, let's see here.
Carlos, I'm not sure if you're trying to share your screen, but we can't see anything.
Sorry about that. 1 second.
No worries.
Now, these vary, of course, in different conditions, but one of the things that we take a look at is the individual drainage areas or drainage zones within that subdivision. Most of the properties that directly abut the backyards drain towards Birdie Lane and such. And then what happens that those that are on the eastern side or here in the bottom, you know, they will have the benefit of the street curb here to collect any runoff. And get that runoff would then get channeled into the common ground detention system. The only exception to the rule would be at the far end here, the most northern point of the property, where they plan to provide that undisturbed buffer in their area. It's a good question, but most of,
Well, I agree that it's probably not on this subdivision so much, but in a different scenario, could that be part of this?
yes. Well, but it's considering the surface area of it's a good question, because that's where we're having the difficulty of trying to handle is the stormwater runoff that happens on the surface. We're really good in terms of capturing stormwater from the built environment, specifically the houses and streets when they have the curbs. And so I think your issue is more on the grading and how those are graded. And those are done on a case-by-case basis in there. Because I will have runoff, you know, in theory, the homes on Birdie Lane will drain into a swell system that gets diverted to the common ground detention system. The runoff that will come from the homes on White Rose will go into the backyards, into the Birdie Lane subdivision, and ultimately get caught into the same topography that leads into the common ground. So at that point, not only do I have the Birdie Lane runoff, but then I would be capturing the neighboring subdivision runoff into one system. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I mean, I would think that the neighboring subdivision and not necessarily a Birdie Lane plot, but let's take those other two ones that want to create their own subdivision, that we would want individual ones versus one big one, because we could control it, or that single house can control it a lot better.
MSD though is going to require this for the subdivision because it's such a larger area. And plus, because they're putting in much more pavement than what the existing driveway was for this particular site.
And I agree. I think that MSD needs that and we want them to have that. I'm just not sure if we don't want the single houses to have one too as well. In addition, or maybe not as big. My personal opinion is I would probably feel better about that 50%, count the roof as 50%, to make sure that we get a detention system in those individual houses.
Carlos, can you explain, let's see, I'm trying to, assuming that how MSD calculates the amount of water is similar to how we calculate the amount of water. It sounds like we already have that roof area, the gutters. Will those gutters actually be directed into the retaining system?
They are through the topography or the finished grades that are proposed. So as it follows through, they are picked up by the swells that are shown and such. That's different than under the current chapter 422, where it is specifically piped in directly into the detention basin. Here, there will be both a combination of pipes and stormwater controlled above grade, on grade.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
For some reason, I was thinking it was going to be like hard piped into it, but I guess I was wrong.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
Carlos, when MSD does its calculations based on these concepts, and then they size how much detention the overall subdivision requires, is there a way for them to provide to us their calculations per house? So in other words, if someone comes in and wants to build a house, let's say twice as big or whatever, it's more impervious surface, we know that the subdivision's detention is based on a house of this size. And this is exceeding that, therefore, it would require additional detention to make the whole system work. Is there a way that we can back into that number?
Not sure. It'd be more of an engineering question. We can check with the,
Carlos, I think you already said that they took the average size of the house
correct.
and they factored that in there. So if we kind of looked at what that average square footage is and took an average of what the driveway, space would be, that way, if they do anything different, we'll know what that delta would be.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I
So
am
we
curious.
could require them to provide additional drainage retention on site above the concepts that MSD did their calculations for.
Yeah. Well, I think it, based on what I've heard of the questions, there are several questions that are beyond my expertise to try to respond to or to address. And I think it would be good for the developer to have one of their engineers kind of talk about that.
Good. But I think we're kind of zeroing in on some potential solutions. About looking at whatever was originally proposed versus what was, actually being built. And then if there's anything that's significantly different or higher, then potentially having, that be retained on the individual property.
Mhm.
The only question I have, and it's about what Tim was mentioning, is, gradings can potentially change, especially with landscaping. And so is there a way to make sure that, if they have a whole system that's designed like this, that they can't change the landscaping or the grounds to interfere with the design of the system? Does that make sense?
Yes. And it's a difficult one to control, but we can take a look into it. I don't have a simple solution is just not to allow it. It's difficult to explain to a property owner that they can't mess with the grades, with lack of a better way to say. And even for some of the smallest things, it can have unintentional consequence in there. One pool can create a domino effect on one end. But that's why we have the subsequent review processes in this, hoping that when we do the reviews, we're looking at these, what was initially intended, what is proposed, and making sure that the system still works.
Mhm.
But somebody trying to flatten out a yard or create a play area or garden can easily unintentionally alter the pattern. Even if we placed it in an easement, I mean, it's still not visible when you're physically out there moving dirt around.
Right.
Carlos, so it seems that one of the questions I would want to ask MSD is how do they accommodate that kind of change in their systems? I mean, maybe they over-design, it'd be a good question to ask so we know what we have to work with from the beginning.
In terms of,
If an individual house has more impervious surface than what's in the concepts, is the system for the entire subdivision already over-designed for X amount? I mean, help deal with some of the great changes that we've been talking about, for instance.
well, but that's two different components because.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be. I'm just trying to
Well,
sort through the questions.
There would be two issues here. And again, I'd have to look at chapter 428, which is stormwater management in there, but there is the detention system in an effort to try to contain the impervious area of the roof. But the other aspect is through the individual review process of why we ask for the contours, the grades, and some adjacent property information. And there's no design guidance of what's good or what's bad. Where on the detention, you have to design a system that's sized to capture that roof area. There's no, you can do it by rock, or you could do it by pipes, or you could do it by those nylon plastic or nylon clothes.
Thanks.
Yes, those tanks, in there. But as you get to the grading of the property, we just kind of take a look at it and give it our best educated guess of whether it seems like it's dispersing the stormwater or it's directing the stormwater or so. And that is at the time of the review and at the time of the final inspection, but there is no consequence after occupancy's been given if somebody wants to go in and put up a vegetable garden. They could, unintentionally completely alter everything that the commission was looking at. And that's where I don't think MSD doesn't take that. They're not looking at that surface area. They're looking at what's getting into their pipes and what that detention system has to be sized before it goes down to the main system. So, again, I think they're good engineering questions that I think are worth asking. I'm not the expert on that.
Okay. So I think we'll have some further discussions later then, maybe when we can bring on some additional experts and kind of confirm those MSD calculations.
All right.
Okay, so do you want to have any more discussion? Or do you think we hit on everything that we can tonight?
No, I will talk to the developer. I think it would be worthwhile for them to we'll have the video posted on the city's YouTube channel for them to kind of take a look, get a gauge of what type of questions the commission's asking, some of the concerns, and then, look at their thoughts. It may narrow it down to, this is one option coming back to the commission or two instead of the three.
I kind of wonder too, if there's any way that they can incorporate maintaining, this drainage system in their subdivision indentures as well. If there's a way that they can help ensure that the subdivision-wide system works.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we can't necessarily dam up a creek, Go ahead, Tim. I saw you got a hand raised.
I just wanted to go back to what you said, Rob, too, as well. And just so we're clear, before, like when I built my house, I had to take all my water that's coming off my roof and direct it right into a drain line and get it away from my house into a perfect place. If we do this, it sounds like we're letting them basically take all their roof water and get into the swell and bring on the surface the whole entire way through it. I personally do not think that is a good idea for what we've discussed in Owlette and how bad our rainwater is. I would like to see more of a control on that individual site instead of letting it go throughout this neighborhood and water basically flowing from the 4 houses each way all the way to the middle of it. I think that's I don't think that's a great idea for us to do, I have to say. And that's more my concern is we want to get as much of that water away from that house to exactly where we want it. And I don't think we're doing that as a commission right now.
No, I don't disagree with you, and I think you're right, but then we're also gonna have this big pit that's gonna be, well, it's gonna have water in there from the rains, but it's gonna be well over designed.
Right.
So, okay, but that's point well taken. I get that. Okay, so I think we'll move on from this and we'll go on to discussion items, number 7. So item A, this is discussion about CDR and new subdivisions.
Chairman, I'm going to ask to defer those next 2
Okay.
discussion items, and we also Bridget did prepare the meeting minutes, but I did not have an opportunity to go through them. So
No worries,
it's
no
on
worries.
me now. It's not on her.
That it's 9:15, I think everybody's gonna
I
be,
haven't opened those files, so I don't know if there's anything in them, but
I don't think you're gonna get any complaints from any of the commissioners. So we'll go on to other business and it's meeting minutes, but I don't believe I saw any meeting minutes. And I know you're catching up. So we'll move on to reports.
all right. A couple of items to report, and I had an agenda thing, and I think I closed it. So I'm going to just kind of wing this. We have our next scheduled meetings in June, of course. Please keep me posted on those dates. I know Mr. Lewis had indicated he did have a conflict on there. It's always good to know in advance so we can coordinate with the petitioners in doing so. I'll quickly go over the July schedule also in that process. So if you bear with me here. So our next scheduled meetings are June 3rd and June 17th. For the meeting on the 17th, we have 3 new houses that we're doing reviews for. 2 on Collingwood in there and 1 in Forsythia. And then there's an addition and a pool that are also pending reviews. I think the addition is going to require the Board of Adjustment, but we're still trying to figure the specifics out on there. And then, of course, we have that commercial addition that we deferred from our meeting. Council will be meeting for their work session June 1st, regular meetings on June 8th and June 22nd. And they're the items going before the commission, and their first meeting will be or actually next week is the vacation plat for that segment of Birdie Lane off of Old Bonham Road. Outside of that, I didn't have any public work updates on the park side. They are continue to moving through with the community center. They've done a really good job in posting plans and information on the city's website, and that includes the improvements that are proposed for each individual park. So if you get an opportunity, there's a wealth of information on their website. On that note, just some development updates. We talked about the Gateway today. The Opus proposed Irvington Rhyme redevelopment that is scheduled to go to council probably towards the latter end of June. They're working out a developer's agreement with council and city manager. And then that will be put together along with the rezoning request, the PDD that came before, or that the commission had recommended at its last meeting. Note again, once that gets adopted, the next step is before they apply for building permits, they come back to the commission to receive their, what I'll call their architectural review. It's a design review process. And there, in that case, at that point, the commission will look at the new entrance that they were kind of giving some guidance of trying to put a little bit more articulation on in there. The Oliver at the Old City Hall is moving pretty fast now that the framing started. It's kind of exciting to see as this third dimension comes into play. So that's cool. The Plant Haven, he's in discussions with some tenants, trying to secure the tenants before they pursue any additional improvements on their site as they go along. Firestone, the anticipated closing, and we're crossing our fingers and everything is in line now, will be by mid-June, and then we anticipate demolition permits will be following shortly thereafter, and construction would begin. Easy Stores, they're still committed to the site. They're working out some details and regarding how the lots are assessed, but we still feel there and still believe that hopefully that construction will be starting by that late fall in there. So I think that covers all the items. I'd be glad to answer any specific questions.
Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to Missy.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. First of all, I want to remind everybody that we do have a beautiful new redesigned website. It is bright, it is beautiful, and it is easy. And it's informational. Go have fun, do some surfing, and enjoy the major overhaul that was done. And kudos to all the staff because they had to participate in doing some upgrading of information stuff to get the new site going. I'm going to focus more on the park stuff, and that we're coming to summer, and it's a different summer than it was spring and summer the last year. Our pavilion operations within our city, they're opening up with the COVID regulations loosened. So the ability to rent pavilions is available. You can book those online. If you're going to be booking for pavilions online, you need to have 48 hours before the day you would like to reserve the pavilion or the park. That's so that they can have the opportunity to clean the pavilion as needed from maybe the previous reservation to the next one. They have replaced 12 park swing set seats within the parks. The ADA water fountain in Irvine has been placed. And there was a presentation by Jean Ponzi with the Missouri Botanical Garden. Green Resource Manager for the Missouri Botanical Garden is what she does. There was a presentation a few weeks ago with regards to not spraying on mosquitoes, and Miss Jean Ponzi did a really nice job, guys. If you want to go in when they post this, the park board meeting, talked about biodiversity, how they're great pollinators. So there's discussion on, does the city want to look at lessening their spraying for mosquitoes? Was there anything else I wanted to kind of go over with you? Oh yes, there is one more thing. That is right. Good news. We're going to have a party in the park. We're going to get people together this year. I learned that it is scheduled for September 10th, that we will have a party in the park September 10th. And that is after a Jewish holiday. And there will be a band called Fat Prophet. So we're hopefully getting back to some normalcy again. Hopefully you're all getting out to be able to see your families again. And tomorrow, Dillman Road's going to be striped. So please be careful. Maybe avoid it. It'll be a nice warm day. Hopefully that paint sticking will take approximately less than 3 minutes. I know I'm not going to get there on my road, on my car. So that's really kind of the latest stuff that's going on. And got any questions, don't hesitate.
It's exciting times, and it's kind of nice to see everything kind of get back to normal. So
It is.
that being said, too, if any of you guys haven't notified Carlos if you've been vaccinated or not, I do think we want to try to keep moving with the idea of how we want to safely start back up the commissions, in-person visits as well. And Carlos, I'm not sure if you've had any more discussions on that from a citywide perspective, but or have you, I should ask.
Well, if I could interject first, with regard to that, the council is beginning to meet together at City Hall. We are not allowing others into the building. They continue to attend if they so wish by Zoom. So the council is beginning to come together within the building.
I think that's a great transition process, to kind of ease back into it, quite frankly. And I like that idea. So, but just let Carlos know if, how everybody else feels about it, as well. And I do know we do need to get somebody else, to fill that vacancy. And especially with everybody excited about, hopefully things getting back to normal. I know there's a lot of people getting ready to also take vacations. So that is another reason why we need to get another person, to fill that vacancy. So I'll get with both Missy and Carlos and see if we can, kind of see where we stand on things and kind of move that along. Any other questions or comments? That being said, I think we'll adjourn at 9:24. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Good night. Take care. Be good.
Good night.
Thank you,
Again,
everybody.